afraid.
Okay. Well, you've seen my movies, right?
Well, how did you originally get involved in acting way back when? How did you first become involved in it?
Oh, wow. Well, actually by mistake. And I know that anybody that's out there that has been inspiring to be in the business, that doesn't sound too good because it sounds like I was just lucky. But I was. I never wanted to become an actor. I was making a lot of money in Europe, in Austria and Germany, and going to, Italy and Tokyo and everywhere, making good money, and I loved the traveling as a model. But one day I was back in my home country, Austria, in Salzburg, and a photographer that I had worked with called me and said, "Sybil, there's a director here. He was going through your pictures and he wants you for a movie." So there. And that was a little movie called Come My Dear Little Bird. I played a character. It's a German fable. I was totally nude with only a long blonde wig that covered my body, pretty much, sitting on the real Rhine River in Germany in November, freezing my butt off, and got so sick, and that was my first role. And so I went back to Austria after that, in a train, dead sick, and I said, if that's movie making, it's not for me. But oh boy, a year later when that movie came out and I was on 2 pages inside of Stern, the biggest magazine in Germany, that really triggered everything, and agents came, and then I was doing, another movie, and that's where it started. So it was really by mistake.
And then you moved to California pretty quickly after that, right? Relatively quickly?
Well, no. First, I worked in German European movies where you do your makeup behind the tree. You change clothes behind the tree. There's no such thing as trailers. And then I was lucky enough to meet the Salkinds, which means I did Bluebeard with Richard Burton in Budapest, and then I did The Three and Four Musketeers in Spain. We shot that in Madrid. And then I went back to Budapest and did with Ernie Borgnine, bless his soul, I did The Prince and the Pauper, and I played his wife in that. So here I was in the dressing room with beautiful American music playing. It was Neil Diamond, I remember, and actually having a makeup girl in the makeup room and everything, and I said, this is what movie making's all about. And then I decided, I said, I want to go there. That's Hollywood. So I went to Hollywood, but that wasn't that fast. No, I had to work my way through it.
I was curious, what do you have a remembrance of working with Richard Burton? What was he like?
Well, all of you who've seen it, if you haven't, my DVD's down there. Richard Burton, as you know, he killed all his wives in that movie. And I didn't play a wife, I played the prostitute. And Richard hired me to teach his wife to be sexy, how to take her clothes off and how to entice him. So I do a really great job as a prostitute in teaching her, and become so enticed with what I'm doing, I actually seduce her. That was Nathalie Delon, Alain Delon's ex-wife, in the movie. And we end up on the ground, on the floor, nude, and I on top of her, and Richard actually comes in to see if his wife is ready to, be sexy, and sees the two of us and cuts the rope of the chandelier. Beautiful chandelier. It comes down and pierces us and kills us. So now I just gave away everything. Now you don't want to go and get it anymore. But after that, I spent evenings, and I mean nights, till 3 in the morning, drinking vodka with Richard Burton, and that was wonderful. It was wonderful. I mean, he was always one of my favorite actors, and a wonderful man. And yeah, I've always said, being chandeliered to death once a day by Richard Burton would be wonderful. Would have been wonderful.
A memorable moment.
Yes.
And not akin to Richard Burton, perhaps, but near and dear to our hearts here, what was the set of Chained Heat like?
Wow, well, Linda Blair down there, She didn't like it so much because if you've seen the movie, and I'm sure you all have, I was kind of dominating her, and she was the victim. And she doesn't really, after that, she really said, I don't want to do any more woman in prison movies, and she didn't like playing the victim, but it was a lot of fun. I loved it because there was great action in that movie, and Billy Fine, again, the producer who's no longer with us, he basically wrote that screenplay. And the director was German. He didn't have that much to do with it, he just directed it, but Billy Fine is really the one who made that script work and wrote those great characters, and Tamara Dobson was in there. She was wonderful. And I loved, fighting her, and it just had a great spirit, and, at the end we all get together and fight against the authorities. And I actually have, right now, a wonderful script, because since Chained Heat, and then with Wendy O. Williams, Reform School Girls, that was the other one, and I think they've been the two most successful women in prison movies ever. I turned down a lot of, they came one script after another, and I turned it down because they were just cheap ripoffs, and nothing interesting, nothing special or new. But now I have a script that I really like. Unfortunately, the writer died, but the widow wants to sell the script, and I'd like to make it. And it's an 80s. It was written in the 80s, but women in prison movies always work if you have great characters, you have great cast, you have a great director, great editing, great action, great story. It starts with the story, music, and everything. And I believe, you guys too. You go in a movie and you come out and you say, that was great. Why? Great actors, great story, great editing, great music. Everything works. So this is a script I see that is in the vein of Chained Heat.
So one of the interesting things, right, about Reform School Girls is that you had been involved in women in prison movies, and the director had made his own women in prison movies before, and then Reform School Girls was sort of a somewhat tongue-in-cheek tribute to those prior movies. Was it hard to sort of balance playing it semi-straight while it also being a tribute kind of parody of those earlier films?
Well, I think it always works. I played it totally straight, and I think that's when it really works well. And I love playing the warden because, when I did Chained Heat, I don't know if you know, poor Stella Stevens is not doing well. She's having a little bit of dementia, and she's in care. And but we had a wonderful time working together. But the press had said, oh, Sybil Danning should have played the warden. She was tougher than the warden. So I enjoyed playing the inmate. But when Reform School Girls came along, my manager had gone to, when he heard about it, went to the producers and said, oh, you have a great role of the warden. You should take Sybil Danning. And they said, well, we'd love to have her, but we can't afford her. So he said, well, go to your distributor and tell them. So that's what he did. And so I really enjoyed playing the warden. And of course, that was such a campy role. But I enjoyed playing it. And yeah, you have to play it straight. And that's what I did, and I really enjoyed that. And in the new movie that I have, I will be the warden again. Because it was like, I did a campaign with my fans, and it was like 80-20. 80 wanted me to be the warden, 20 the inmate.
Going back a few years prior to that, there was a movie you did, The Man with Bogart's Face, but Robert Saatchi, who was he actually was a Humphrey Bogart lookalike. He did look like him, and there was a brief period of time where he tried to capitalize on that, or other filmmakers maybe tried to capitalize on that. And this movie was made with I wouldn't want to call it an all-star genre movie or all-star B-movie cast, because it's not. There's some really good people in it. But what do you recall about that film? You're actually on the poster, too, which is a great poster. If anybody's not seen it, you should check it out. What do you recall about that movie?
Well, first of all, I met Michelle Phillips on that movie, and she's a wonderful gal, just wonderful. I always loved her when she was with the Mamas and Papas, but she's just a great gal in person, and such a trooper. And of course, that was the first of 3 movies that I did with Franco Nero. I loved working with him because I played his girlfriend in that and did a striptease for him. And it was a lot of fun working on that movie, and yeah, it became a classic, and he does really look like Bogey, absolutely.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was actually on Dark Shadows too, which was something I didn't know, and I was watching some old episodes of Dark Shadows. Oh my God, it's Robin Sanchez. Art.
Well, another very chiller theater movie you were in, of course, is Howling 2, which maybe not the best best movie of all time, but we hold it near and dear to our hearts. What can you tell us about that experience?
Well, I see so many that have already been at my table, so you know a lot of the stories. Whenever I have time, I like to answer your questions. So you probably, most of you know that I've done 5 movies with Christopher Lee, who is another wonderful actor and person, no longer with us. I loved working with Christopher. We did first movie we did, you guys probably know all 3 titles. It came out under Whispering Death, Albino, and Night of the Ascari. We shot that in Africa, and we had a wonderful time shooting there. That was the first movie. Then we did, of course, the 3 and 4 Musketeers together, and we did another movie that that I have, which is based on a best-selling novel called The Salamander, and that was based on a true story, fascist coup in Italy in the end of the 60s. Morris West wrote that book. He also wrote The Shoes of the Fisherman, and that was a wonderful cast. Christopher was in there. I played the female lead. Also, Claudia Cardinale was in that, and then of course, oh yes, Franco Nero. There you go. And then the third one I did with Franco was Day of the Cobra, which was an action movie with Franco Nero that we shot. So, and then, of course, The Howling. So there you have the 5 movies that I did with Christopher. It was wonderful shooting with him. When we shot that movie, we were still behind the Iron Curtain. It was the Czech Republic. And it was, it was partially horrendous and partially a lot of fun, because we were waiting for our costumes, and when the costumes finally came from Hollywood, it was so hard to get stuff in and out because it was still, you know, behind the Iron Curtain at that time when we shot it. It was somewhere between Vienna and Prague, in the boondocks, in this beautiful castle. So we get the costumes, and the director opens it up, and he says, "Oh my God," and he calls Hollywood, and he says, "We're not doing Planet of the Apes. We're doing The Howling." They actually sent us the wrong costumes. They were ape costumes. And of course, you know, Hollywood said, "You gotta make do, so just use it," you know. So the director comes to me and he says, he tells me about this, and I said, "Really? So what are we gonna do? You mean they got a blonde ape outfit in there?" And he said, no, we have to do something different with you, because you have to be beautiful. You're the first blonde werewolf and everything. So luckily, most of the makeup people were from the Czech Republic, and they were very, very talented. And so they reworked the outfits, you know, to fit werewolves. And for me, they said the only solution we have is what we can do is take hair, and they had like strings of hair or extensions, how we know them today, very fine, you know, strings of hair, and we have to glue that on Sybil's body starting from the bottom up. So that's what we did. So for 8 hours I stood, and it was like, you have to imagine like, you know, a longer version of eyelashes, one after another, 8 hours, just for that one turning into a werewolf. But you know, you got to do what you got to do, and it turned out pretty nice. I mean, I have pictures of it, and everybody loves it. But when we had that ménage à trois, after we had that scene, the 3 of us, I was kind of blonde, blackish, and the black werewolves were black, blondish, because my hair came off on them, their hair came off on me. So it's kind of like we had our own version of how you turn, and especially in a ménage à trois. So that was fun, you know. And I was sitting there one night. I mean, we always sat in the hotel because there was nowhere to go. You know, we shot, there was nothing all around, but in that little hotel restaurant. And we sat together and had dinner every night, Christopher, and we always walked in and had to really, I mean, we laughed, and then we kind of already knew what was going on. There was always one little guy sitting in the corner in that room, and we swore he was KGB. But he was like something out of a movie. You couldn't cast him like that. I mean, he sat there, he had this scrumpy suit on, real thick glasses. And I said, yeah, he's the guy with a dead squirrel on his head. He had this bad hairpiece, this bad toupee. And we called it the dead squirrel on his head. And he just sat there like this back there, eating his goulash, pretending like, you know, we weren't even there, but we knew exactly, you know, they were watching us. That was, you know, that was still behind the Iron Curtain. So that was amazing. But one night, Christopher said to me, you know, and I told him because it was the night after I did the turning, and the gluing on was one thing, but taking that hair off, that really hurt, because I don't know what it is, kind of an alcohol kind of, you know, stuff that they use on your body, but I have very sensitive skin. That burned like hell. And when I was finally finished, I had dinner with Christopher, and he said, you know, you have to remember one thing, Sybil, but he said, I know that's what you are, and you have to keep remembering that. No matter what role you take, always be true to that character. There are people that just take a check and then say, oh hell, when can I get out of this, and when can I go home? But he said, you know, if you commit to something, you have to commit to it and give it your 100% or 200%, because your fans will take it serious, and so you have to take it serious. And I learned that from Christopher, and that's the way I feel. I just feel that once you're committed, you have to give it your all, you know, but not everybody does that. But I learned that from Christopher. And the other funny thing is, you know, Christopher, he could tell stories for hours and hours and hours. He had so many wonderful stories to tell. And but he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he didn't gamble. He was actually a very boring guy. All he did was talk about his movie, you know, stories, but that was wonderful. And I was also friends with his wife, Gita, who was a top model for Dior in Paris, and she never went along because usually wherever, you know, where we shot, she wasn't in the Czech Republic. But when we shot the movie in Africa, she was there, and I said, Gita, Africa, dust, dirt, wild animals, what are you doing here? She says, darling, don't you know there are emerald mines here? So I know that she had to come along, and poor Christopher was doing that movie and then spending all his money on an emerald for her. But we sat there at night, she and I, and we played cards, and we smoked cigarettes, and we drank, and Christopher just sat there and told stories, just told stories. So we had a lot of fun on that movie. And it's, you know, you all clapped. You didn't clap at anything else. And I have to tell you, thank you for being such loyal fans to The Howling 2, because, you know, Joe Dante and I, we bump into each other in parties and everything, you know, in Hollywood. And we always hug, and it's like we hug, and I say, I like yours better. And he says, no, I like yours better. You can't compare them, you know. His Howling was wonderful, and certainly, you know, we didn't have Rob Bottin, you know, and we didn't have everything else that he had. But our movie, oh, what do you say about the band? Wasn't Babel fantastic? That's a Czech band in there. Great, great, great band. And so, you know, when now the Blu-ray came out, I think there were like 6 or 7 articles that I read, and every one of them starts out with, you know, I've never seen a movie that has such a love-hate relationship, you know, because every critic starts out with, well, you know, oh my God, you saw that, and that was terrible, and that was just horrendous, and that's awful. But you gotta look at that, and then you gotta look at that, and of course my end scene in the movie was a big hit. But the end was always a must-see. So this is a movie that has a love-hate relationship, but it's entertaining and it's fun. And I actually went to Gary Brandner. It just shows you that we're all getting a little older. Gary Brandner died. He was the author of the Howling books. He wrote all the Howling books. He was also one of the writers on Howling 2. And when Howling 2 came out on DVD, I said to Philippe Mora, the director, I said, let's do another Howling, because it was #1 in the UK, and it's just a hot seller, and that's what counts. And he says, I'm going to tell Gary, and he introduced me to Gary, and the three of us said, yeah, let's do it. Only the Howling, there's something messed up in the rights. We cannot do another Howling because someone has those rights. But he said, let's do our own new franchise. So right now, we actually sat down, and Gary wrote the first screenplay for a possibility for a new franchise, and we're going to start out with a werewolf, but it's going to be other creatures as well. And Philippe will direct it, and I will star in it. And right now we're calling it Night Hunters, and I have a wonderful emblem already for my uniform in that. So we're going to continue to carry the legend. It just can't have the name Howling.
We have maybe just a few minutes for some questions from the audience. Would you like to take some?
Would love to, yes. Go ahead.
Was Wendy Williams as crazy as she appeared to be? And also, how was working with Rob Zombie?
Oh, well, what, is Wendy as what?
Crazy as
Oh,
she
is Wendy as crazy as she seems? Absolutely, even crazier, yes. I mean, those who saw the movie, I had suggested to the director, I said, you know, there's really no ending for my character in there. I said, why don't we have a cat fight, Wendy and me? I know the fans would have loved that. And he loved it, and he said, I'm going to tell her. I'm going to talk to her, and he comes back and says, no, Wendy doesn't want to do it. No explanation, she just didn't want to do it. And that's just her. But you know, we happened to work out at the same gym in Hollywood, and I bumped into her once, and I'd walk in and she'd say, hey, yo, and walked on. And so, hey, yo. Didn't want to talk. She was very disconnected, yeah. Unfortunately, and you know, she did die, yeah. And Rob Zombie was wonderful to work with, because I actually, you know, when I went to see him, his office just called and said, come in. And I knew it was his birthday, so I brought him a Howling poster and a Howling DVD, and wanted to give him that as his, and I did give it to him as his birthday gift. And he told me that he loved that movie. He's a huge fan of that movie. And when I came in, you know, it wasn't like, let's talk about the role or anything. It was come in, and he's here, we have 2 wigs, you know, Sherry's gonna wear this one, you guys are playing twins, and it was just so easy because he hires who he likes. He's like Tarantino. He hires the people he likes, he expects what what you bring to the character, and he lets you do it, but if he doesn't like it, he'll let you know. He's wonderful director to work with.
And Matt, the gentleman with the excellent Sybil Danning adventure video brochure you signed earlier, has a question.
How did you get hooked up with Fred Olen Ray?
I'm trying to think what the first movie was. It was through my manager, because he was always on the lookout for good roles for me.
Phantom Empire?
I think it was Phantom Empire, yes. And, you know, that was with Robbie the Robot, and great outfits, and that was a fun movie.
What about The Tomb? How did that one?
Oh, The Tomb. I loved The Tomb. Well, I was the jewel thief in that, and flew my own plane, and yeah, we had that one too. I enjoyed playing that too. I mean, Fred is great. I also did The Lair with him. The Lair, where that's the only vampire movie that I've ever done, but I have a vampire movie that I'm going to be co-writing, co-directing, and co-producing. And but I love working with Fred Olen Ray, and we're still very close friends. And his son, Chris Ray, is doing some good little movies now, and he actually has a World War II film noir that he's going to do next year and wants me to play the lead. So now I'll be acting with his son. I'm outliving everybody.
What was it like doing the episode of V that you were in?
Oh. Yeah, you know, V, I really love V very much. And when I went in to see the producers, they said, Miss Danning, you're going to play, you know, Mary Kruger, Commander Kruger, And of course I loved that, everything with uniforms. My father and stepfather were all in the Army, so I must have something to do with that, I don't know. But they said, would you consider coming on as a regular? And I said, oh, and how would I? I would love to. But you all know probably that, you know, at that time, NBC had already made up their mind that they were going to axe it because they were very low in the ratings. I don't know why. I think it was a wonderful series. I think they were like 60 in the ratings. And when I did that episode, NBC put a lot of money into it. I mean, you've seen all the, you know, the PR photos that they did with me with that zebra outfit and everything, and it had one of the highest ratings of all of their episodes. And so when I heard of the great success, I thought, wow, we're going to continue. And I know that my manager was in touch with the producers, and he said, so did you see the ratings? He said, yeah, but like right after that, they were told it was already, you know, it was already planned that they were going to axe it. So too bad, yeah. And the new one, oh God, the new one was, you can't even compare that. Yes.
What was it like working on Some Magnificent Gladiators? I thought it was absolutely amazing to see you in the Yul Brynner role, and I thought that movie was highly underrated.
Yeah, Hercules got a lot more attention, and Lou Ferrigno and I, we both played in Hercules and Seven Magnificent Gladiators, and we actually, you know, Cannes Films at that time, we went right to Cannes, promoted it, and went right to Rome and shot those movies back to back. Well, Seven Magnificent Gladiators was kind of a take, you know, a take on the Seven Magnificent Samurai, which was also Battle Beyond the Stars, was also the same thing. That was Seven Samurai in outer space. So I loved that, and playing you know, a gladiator next to Lou was wonderful, and riding horses with him and sword fighting. Actually, there was there was one scene in that movie where, because when I don't wear my glasses, I'm blinder than a bat, and so the director sets everything up, and it's a huge scene, you know, and I come down with my sword, and I'm running through there, and I'm supposed to run up to one of the main bad guys and battle him. So we have this all set up, and I'm running through there, and I don't know what happened, but anyhow, I ran right past him. I didn't see him, okay? So we had to do that again. But other than that, you know, I love riding horses, and I did my own horseback riding, and some of that was dangerous because we shot in the ruins, the real ruins on the beach of Fiumicino outside of Rome, and the horses slid, you know, it's very slippery, but never anything happened. And there's a lot about that, you know, European filmmaking that is also fun here. They wouldn't even let you, you know, ride a horse in a difficult situation. But I enjoyed that movie. And yes, it is very underrated. Yeah, like I said, Hercules got huge billboards on you know, on Sunset Boulevard, and Gladiators didn't.
To end with, Sybil appeared in a video, and we're going to show that now, but before that, maybe you would like to describe what they're going to see?
Yes, I love music, and I became friends with Chad Cherry. He is the lead singer in a band you might know. They're called The Last Vegas. The Last Vegas. They're a rock and roll heavy metal band out of Chicago, and he asked me if I would like to come on board. They said they had a wonderful single, if I would produce it and star in it. And so it's called The Other Side, and it's The Last Vegas. So I'm starring in it and produced it. So that's what you'll see.
Incredible array of photos and copies of
Ready?